I am Sofia. Welcome to True Payback, where story hits different. Hit subscribe. Let's dive in.
My name is Sofia Rodriguez, and for the past 8 years, I've been the invisible daughter in a family that only valued visible success. My father, Miguel Rodriguez, built Rodriguez Industries from the ground up. Starting as a small industrial supply company in 1987, he grew it into a regional powerhouse with $47 million in annual revenue. He employed 230 people. He won Business Leader of the Year 3 times. His office had a wall dedicated to awards, certificates, and photos with governors, senators, and industry titans. My older brother, Carlos, followed perfectly in Dad's footsteps. MBA from Wharton. VP of Operations at Rodriguez Industries by 28. Company car, corner office, invitation to every board meeting. Dad introduced him at events as my successor, the future of this company. My younger sister, Isabella, became a corporate attorney. She worked at a prestigious downtown firm, handled high-profile cases, drove a BMW Dad helped her finance. He bragged about her courtroom victories at every family dinner. Then there was me. I graduated from State University with a degree in computer science in 2016. Not prestigious enough for Dad. I didn't join Rodriguez Industries. I told him industrial supply chain management didn't interest me. That was my first disappointment. Instead, I moved into a modest rental house with an unfinished basement and started building software. What kind of software? Dad asked once, the only time he showed mild interest. Enterprise resource planning systems with integrated AI logistics optimization, I explained. He stared at me blankly. So, computer stuff. Can you make actual money with computer stuff? Some companies do, I said carefully. Well, when you're ready for a real job, Rodriguez Industries always needs IT support. He smiled like he'd offered me a kingdom. I never took him up on it. For the first 3 years, I lived on freelance web development projects that paid my rent and ramen noodle budget. I woke at 5 a.m., coded until midnight, taught myself machine learning, cloud architecture, and supply chain analytics. My basement became my office. 4 monitors, a standing desk I built from IKEA parts, and servers humming in the corner that I bought used on eBay. Family dinners became showcases for everyone else's achievements. Carlos closed a $3.2 million deal with Pemberton Manufacturing, Dad announced one Sunday. Everyone applauded. Isabella won her case. The settlement was 6 figures, Mom added proudly. More applause. And Sofia? Aunt Maria asked politely. What are you working on? Still developing my platform, I said simply. In her basement, Dad clarified with a tight smile. Playing with computers. Carlos smirked. Have you made any actual revenue yet? Some, I said. How much? Isabella pressed. Enough, I replied calmly. Dad shook his head. When you're ready to discuss real business, let me know. I could teach you how actual commerce works. What they didn't know, what I never told them, was that by year 4 my basement startup had signed its first major client. A mid-sized logistics company in Ohio that paid $180,000 annually for my platform. Year 5 brought 3 more clients. Year 6 brought 12. By 2023 my company, NextGen Logistics Solutions, had 73 enterprise clients across North America, annual recurring revenue of $43 million, and a staff of 42 employees working remotely. I'd been featured in TechCrunch, Supply Chain Quarterly, and Forbes' 30 Under 30 list for enterprise software innovation. I still worked from my basement. Not because I couldn't afford office space. I'd been offered venture capital funding that would have given me a downtown tower suite. I stayed in my basement because it kept me focused, kept me away from the noise, and frankly kept my family from asking too many questions. If they knew, my best friend and Cito Marcus said once, they'd never leave you alone. Exactly, I agreed. I bought the house I was renting. Then I bought the duplex next door and converted it into a legitimate home office with proper server infrastructure. My basement became a war room. Glass whiteboards covered in algorithms, prototype hardware, 3 full-time developers who came in for sprints. I paid myself a modest salary of $95,000. Enough to live comfortably but not enough to raise eyebrows at family dinners. I drove a 7-year-old Honda Civic. I dressed in jeans and hoodies. I looked exactly like what my father thought I was. a struggling tech worker playing entrepreneur. Meanwhile, my company's valuation hit $240 million. The irony? One of my largest clients, responsible for $6.7 million in annual recurring revenue, was Rodriguez Industries' biggest customer, Pemberton Manufacturing. Pemberton used my software to manage their entire supply chain. Every shipment they received from Rodriguez Industries was processed through my platform. Every inventory optimization, every logistics route, every efficiency improvement that made Pemberton profitable enough to keep ordering from Dad's company was powered by my code. Pemberton's CEO Richard Pemberton knew exactly who I was. We had quarterly business reviews. He'd offered to introduce me to Dad a dozen times. Mr. Pemberton, I always said politely, I'd prefer to keep family and business separate. Your father has no idea his daughter's software runs my entire operation? None, I confirmed. Richard found this hilarious. One day, Sofia. One day you'll have to tell him. Maybe, I said. When the timing's right. The timing became right on September 15, 2024, the day of my father's retirement party. Dad had planned his retirement for 2 years. At 63, he was ready to hand Rodriguez Industries to Carlos and enjoy his golden years. The retirement party was held at the Grandview Country Club, the same place he'd celebrated every major business milestone for 3 decades. 200 guests. Catered dinner. Open bar. A video montage of Dad's career highlights. Local news coverage. The mayor gave a speech. I was invited, obviously. As family. As the disappointing daughter who never quite measured up. I wore a simple black dress, minimal jewelry, and arrived alone. Mom hugged me at the entrance. You look lovely, Mija, she said. Did you come straight from work? Yes, I said simply. Still in the basement? She tried to hide her disappointment. Still there, I confirmed. Carlos arrived with his wife, Amanda, both dressed like they'd stepped from a luxury magazine spread. Isabella came with her fiancé Marcus, not my CTO Marcus, a different Marcus who worked in wealth management. We sat at the family table front and center. Dad stood at the podium giving his retirement speech. 37 years ago I started Rodriguez Industries with 1 truck, 1 warehouse and a dream, he began. Today we're a $47 million company employing 230 families. I built this with hard work, discipline, and the support of my family. He gestured to our table. My son Carlos will lead this company into the future. My daughter, Isabella, keeps us legally protected. My wife, Maria, kept me sane through every challenge. He paused. And my daughter, Sofia, is figuring things out in her own way. Polite laughter from the crowd. I smiled and nodded. The speech continued. Awards were presented. Guests mingled during cocktail hour. I stood by the bar sipping water, checking my phone. That's when Dad approached with 3 of his longtime colleagues. George Patterson from Patterson Steel, David Chin from Chin Industrial Supplies, and Robert Morrison from Morrison Logistics. Gentlemen, Dad said proudly, you know my family. This is Sofia, my youngest. They nodded politely. Sofia's been exploring entrepreneurship, Dad said with a tight smile. From her basement. George chuckled. Everyone starts somewhere, Miguel. True, Dad agreed. But 8 years in a basement feels less like starting and more like stalling. David nodded sympathetically. What's your business model, Sofia? Enterprise software, I said simply. Logistics optimization platforms. Ah, Robert said. Competitive field. Very, I agreed. Dad put his hand on my shoulder. She's in her basement playing businesswoman. Hasn't found real traction yet. I keep telling her, there's always a position at Rodriguez Industries if she wants actual stability. Such a disappointment, he added quietly but loud enough for them to hear. The 3 men nodded sympathetically. George said something about finding your path takes time. David mentioned his nephew who tried startups for years before getting a real job. I replied calmly, okay. They continued talking, about Dad's legacy, about Carlos taking over, about the future of industrial supply chains. I stood there smiling politely, saying nothing. Then I pulled out my phone. I opened my encrypted messaging app and texted my corporate accounts manager, Jennifer Moss. Terminate all partnerships with Rodriguez Industries immediately. Effective Monday. Pull recommendation from Pemberton Titanium Corp and Vanguard Manufacturing. Notify legal to begin contract dissolution procedures. I hit send. I put my phone back in my purse. I took another sip of water. 30 seconds later, Dad's phone buzzed in his jacket pocket. He ignored it, continuing his story about landing the Pemberton account in 2019. His phone buzzed again. And again. "Excuse me," Dad said, pulling out his phone. His face changed immediately. Confusion. Then concern. "I need to take this," he said, walking away quickly. George looked at me curiously. "Everything all right?" "I'm sure it's fine," I said calmly. What Dad didn't know, what none of them knew, was that NextGen Logistics Solutions wasn't just another software company. We'd become the invisible infrastructure powering 60% of mid-sized manufacturing and distribution companies in the region. When companies used our platform, we didn't just provide software. We provided integrated consulting, supply chain optimization, vendor recommendations, and partnership facilitation. If you were our client, we helped you find the best suppliers, negotiate the best rates, and build the most efficient operations. Rodriguez Industries had 3 of their largest accounts because of us. Pemberton Manufacturing? I'd introduced them to Rodriguez Industries in 2020, recommending Dad's company as a reliable supplier for industrial components. That relationship now generated $6.7 million annually for Rodriguez Industries. Titanium Corp? Another introduction, another recommendation. $4.2 million annually. Vanguard Manufacturing? Same story. $3.8 million annually. Combined, those 3 accounts represented $14.7 million, nearly 31% of Rodriguez Industries' total revenue. And I just pulled the plug on all of them. Jennifer's text came back 2 minutes later. Confirmed. Pemberton CO notified. Titanium and Vanguard received termination notices Monday morning. Legal drafting formal withdrawal of partnership recommendations. All 3 companies have been informed that NextGen will no longer support supply relationships with Rodriguez Industries. I texted back, "Thank you. Please prepare alternative supplier recommendations for all 3 clients by end of business Monday." "Already in progress," Jennifer replied. I looked across the room. Dad was on the phone, his face now pale, his hand gripping the phone so hard his knuckles were white. Carlos had noticed and walked over, concerned. I watched calmly from the bar. The party continued, but Dad never returned to his colleagues. He spent 20 minutes on the phone, then disappeared into the country club manager's office with Carlos. Isabella noticed and joined them. I stayed at the bar, making small talk with distant relatives who asked polite questions about my computer work. "It keeps me busy," I said pleasantly. 40 minutes later, Dad emerged from the office. His retirement party was still in full swing. Guests laughing, music playing, the video montage looping on screens around the room, but Dad looked like a man who'd just witnessed a car accident. He found me at the bar. "Sofia," he said quietly. "We need to talk." "Of course," I said calmly. "Here or somewhere private?" "Private." We walked to a small conference room off the main hall. Carlos and Isabella were already there, both looking shaken. Dad closed the door. "Pemberton Manufacturing just called," Dad said, his voice tight. "They're terminating their contract with us. Effective in 30 days. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. "They said," Dad's voice cracked slightly. "They said their logistics platform provider is withdrawing the partnership recommendation that brought us together. Something about strategic realignment and conflicting business relationships." I nodded sympathetically. "That's $6.7 million in annual revenue," Carlos said, his face pale. "Dad, that's catastrophic." "It gets worse," Isabella added quietly. "I just got off the phone with our attorney. Titanium Corp sent a preliminary termination notice. Same reason. Same logistics platform provider withdrawing recommendations." Dad looked at me. "Do you know what this means? Rodriguez Industries could lose nearly a third of our revenue. We'd have to lay off staff. Cut operational budgets. Cancel expansion plans." "That sounds serious," I said calmly. "Serious." Carlos snapped. "Sofia, this is a disaster. Dad's retirement, the company transition. Everything is falling apart." "I'm sorry you're going through this," I said evenly. Dad stared at me. For the first time in 8 years he really looked at me. Not through me, not past me, but at me. Sofia, he said slowly. Do you know anything about this? About what? I asked. About this logistics platform provider. Whoever's pulling our accounts. I met his eyes calmly. Why would I know anything about that? Because, Dad said carefully, you work in logistics software. You said you build logistics optimization platforms. I do, I confirmed. And these companies, Pemberton, Titanium, Vanguard, they all use the same logistics platform. Next-Gen Logistics Solutions. That's a well-known platform in the industry, I said. Who owns Next-Gen? Dad asked. I paused. Then I smiled slightly. I do. The conference room went completely silent. Carlos spoke first. What? I own Next-Gen Logistics Solutions, I said calmly. I founded it 8 years ago. In my basement. The basement you've been mocking at every family dinner since 2016. Dad's face went from pale to gray. You own? The platform that manages supply chains for 73 enterprise clients across North America, I continued. Including Pemberton Manufacturing, Titanium Corp and Vanguard Manufacturing. The same platform that recommended Rodriguez Industries as a preferred supplier to all 3 companies. The same platform that just withdrew those recommendations. Isabella's mouth opened but no sound came out. You. Carlos said. You did this. I built the relationships, I corrected. I facilitated the partnerships. I recommended your company because despite everything I believed Rodriguez Industries provided quality service. I wanted Dad's company to succeed. Then why, Dad started. Why did I terminate the partnerships tonight? I finished. Because 30 minutes ago you stood in front of your colleagues and called me a disappointment. You said I was playing businesswoman in my basement. You've spent 8 years dismissing my work, belittling my choices and treating my success like a hobby. Your success. Carlos said. Sofia, we had no idea. Because I never told you, I said. Because every time I tried to explain what I was building, you interrupted with advice about real business. Every time I mentioned a milestone, you changed the subject to Carlos's latest deal or Isabella's latest case. You weren't interested in what I was doing. You were interested in what you thought I should be doing. Dad sank into a chair. How big is your company? Annual recurring revenue last year was $43 million, I said. This year we're projected to hit $61 million. We employ 42 people. Our company valuation is currently $240 million. I've been profitable since year 3. The numbers hung in the air like grenades. $240 million? Isabella whispered. Conservative estimate, I said. We've had acquisition offers as high as $380 million. I turned them down. Carlos looked like he might be sick. And you've been working from a basement this whole time? By choice, I said. I own the property. I expanded into the duplex next door. I have proper infrastructure, a dedicated team and everything I need. I stayed in my basement because it kept me focused and kept my family from interfering. Interfering? Dad said weakly. Yes, I said firmly. If you'd known about my success, you would have tried to control it. You would have given unsolicited advice, demanded I run things your way or worse, tried to absorb my company into Rodriguez Industries. I built Next-Gen to be independent. To be mine. Dad's hands were shaking. Sofia. I never meant. You meant exactly what you said, I interrupted gently. For 8 years, you've made it clear that my path wasn't valid, my work wasn't real, and my choices were disappointing. You're not a bad father, Dad. But you're a father who only values success that looks like yours. The partnerships, Carlos said desperately. Can you reverse this? Please. I looked at my brother. Why would I? Because we're family, he said. Because Rodriguez Industries is Dad's legacy. Because people's jobs are at stake. You're right, I said calmly. People's jobs are at stake. Which is why I'm not shutting down Rodriguez Industries. I'm just removing my support. You'll have to find Pemberton, Titanium and Vanguard's business the same way you found every other client. Through your own efforts, your own relationships, your own merit. But we can't, Carlos started. You can, I said firmly. Rodriguez Industries is a good company. You provide quality products and reliable service. You'll survive this. You'll have to work harder, cut some costs, maybe postpone expansion plans. But you'll survive. And if we don't? Isabella asked quietly. Then you'll learn the same lesson I learned 8 years ago, I said. That success isn't given. It's built. From the ground up. In basements, spare rooms, and unglamorous spaces where nobody's watching and nobody's impressed. You'll learn that validation from others means nothing if you haven't validated yourself first. I stood up. I need to get back to the party, I said. People will notice the family missing. Sofia, wait, Dad said, standing. I turned. Dad's eyes were wet. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know, I said gently. But sorry doesn't undo 8 years of dismissal. Sorry doesn't rebuild the respect you never gave me. Sorry is a starting point, not an ending. What do you want from us? Dad asked. Nothing, I said. I don't need your validation anymore, Dad. I don't need your approval or your recognition. I built something extraordinary and I did it without you. I'm telling you now not because I need you to be proud. I'm telling you because you need to understand what you've been dismissing all these years. I walked to the door. Sofia, Isabella said. What happens now? I paused, my hand on the doorknob. Now, I said. I go back to my basement. I keep building. And you figure out whether Rodriguez Industries can stand on its own without my help. I opened the door. One more thing, I added. Marcus, my CTO, he'll be at your office Monday morning. Why? Carlos asked. Because despite everything, I'm not heartless, I said. Marcus will provide consulting on how to rebuild your client relationships and diversify your revenue streams. Free of charge. Consider it a final gift from the disappointing daughter who was playing businesswoman in her basement. I walked out. The party ended 2 hours later. I stayed until the end, smiling politely, accepting congratulations on behalf of my father, playing the dutiful daughter. Dad gave his closing remarks, but his heart wasn't in it anymore. People noticed but attributed it to the emotion of retirement. I drove home alone, back to my modest rental house with the basement that built an empire. Rodriguez Industries survived. Barely. They lost the Pemberton account. They lost Titanium and Vanguard. Their revenue dropped by 29% in Q4 2024. They laid off 43 employees. They canceled their expansion into the Southwest market. But Carlos, to his credit, fought hard. He restructured operations, cut unnecessary costs, and personally visited every potential client within a 300-mile radius. Isabella helped renegotiate vendor contracts and payment terms. Dad came out of retirement to help stabilize the transition. Marcus, my Marcus, spent 3 months consulting with them, teaching them the client relationship strategies that I'd built NextGen on. He was patient, professional, and never once mentioned that he was helping the family that had dismissed his best friend for nearly a decade. By March 2025, Rodriguez Industries had recovered to 82% of their previous revenue. They were leaner, more efficient, and more resilient. Dad called me in April. Sofia, he said. Can we meet? Of course, I said. We met at a coffee shop near his house. Not the country club. Not his office. Somewhere neutral. He looked older. Tired. I wanted you to see this, he said, sliding an envelope across the table. Inside was a framed photograph. Me at 8 years old, sitting at Dad's desk at the original Rodriguez Industries warehouse, playing with an ancient desktop computer. I found this in storage, Dad said. You loved that computer. You'd spend hours figuring out how it worked, how to make it do things I didn't understand. Even then, you were building something. I looked at the photograph. I remembered that computer. I didn't see it, Dad continued, his voice breaking. I didn't see you. I saw what I wanted you to be, not who you were. And I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry. Dad, I started. Let me finish, he said. You were right. I only valued success that looked like mine. I thought I was protecting you, guiding you, but I was just controlling you. And when you chose a different path, I dismissed it because I didn't understand it. He wiped his eyes. You built something extraordinary, he said. Something I could never build. And you did it alone, without support, without encouragement. That makes you stronger than I ever was. I reached across the table and took his hand. I forgive you, I said quietly. But things can't go back to how they were. I know, he said. I just want to know you. The real you. Not the daughter I imagined, but the daughter who exists. The woman who built a $240 million company in her basement. I smiled. It's $290 million now. We had a good quarter. He laughed through his tears. Of course you did. We talked for 2 hours. Really talked. For the first time in 8 years, Dad asked about my work, my goals, my challenges. He listened without interrupting, without offering unsolicited advice. He asked to see my office. I took him to my basement. He stood in the middle of my war room. Servers humming, monitors glowing, whiteboards covered in algorithms and logistics models. And he wept. This is incredible, he whispered. Sofia, you built all this? With a team, I said. But yes. From right here. He turned to me. Can I tell people about what you've built? You can tell anyone you want, I said. But not as the father who always knew I'd succeed. As the father who learned to see me. Deal, he said. Rodriguez Industries and Next Gen Logistics Solutions never partnered again. We remained separate entities operating in parallel. But Dad and I rebuilt something more important than a business partnership. We rebuilt trust. And that was worth more than any contract.